In the arid deserts of the Middle East, the divine is strictly formless. God is one, unseen, and absolute. But travel eastward to the Indian subcontinent, and that singularity spills over into a chaotic, vibrant explosion of millions of distinct deities. The major Abrahamic faiths share a strict prohibition. You do not give the Creator a physical shape. Giving the infinite a concrete form is treated as a severe violation, an attempt to contain the uncontainable. Contrast that with the East. Here, divinity is highly visual. The infinite is carved in stone, cast in bronze, and worshipped in countless physical manifestations. Opposing ideas and contradictions coexist quietly, and are even celebrated. Looking at these two approaches, it feels like they developed on entirely separate planets. Yet, at the root of the Indo-Iranian traditions, we find a shared ancestral conflict that eventually forced these two worlds apart. The deep theological divide between East and West isn't born out of geography alone. It traces back to a forgotten philosophical split between two groups of priests thousands of years ago. The record of this split survives in an ancient Indian text called the Atharvaveda. For centuries, it lacked the status of the Holy Trinity of Vedas, regarded not as royal literature, but as a practical manual for commoners' magic, healing, and everyday protection. But hidden beneath the incantations is a historical ledger. The text documents the philosophies of two rival priestly clans who shaped early Vedic culture, the Anguras and the Brigas. The Anguras were adventurous. They favored action, desire, and pure will. Their chief deity was the storm god Indra, a figure who didn't follow the rules, he made them. If breaking the rules won the battle, the Anguras embraced it. The Brigas took the exact opposite approach. They were stoic and obsessed with stability. They worshipped Varuna, an all-seeing sky and water god who represented strict cosmic order. To the Brigus, the universe ran on unbreakable laws, and true power came from aligning with that geometry, not disrupting it. This highly specific debate over whether the universe should be governed by fluid will or rigid order eventually fractured, and that fracture birthed the ideological fault lines that define human religion today. The Brigu philosophy, centered on a singular cosmic order and their supreme god Varuna, found its way westward into ancient Iran. A local prophet named Zarathustra took this theological framework and heavily refined it. He adopted this all-knowing deity and built an entirely new religious identity around it. We track this linguistic evolution. In ancient texts, Varuna is called Asura Medas, the Lord of Wisdom. Over time, those syllables mutated in Old Iranian to Ahura Mazda, the formless god of Zoroastrianism. Zarathustra purged the old system, stripping the chaotic Anguirus deities of their divine status. The old devas became literal demons. This stark binary, a single god of good opposed by absolute evil, seeded the rigid monotheistic tenets of Judaism, Christianity, and ultimately Islam. The singular, formless god of the modern Western world carries the distinct DNA of this Brigu ideal, an all-seeing judge of order, distilled from the character of Varuna. Meanwhile, back on the Indian subcontinent, the theology took a completely different path. Instead of isolating Varuna and banishing the rest, the culture absorbed him into a larger pantheon. Over centuries, Varuna's majestic qualities, his blue skin, cosmic vastness, and all-seeing nature, were transferred to Vishnu. The deity changed names, but the underlying characteristics were preserved. Because the spirit of adventurous chaos remained strong in India, the culture never felt the need to purge rival gods. Multiple forms, fierce contradictions, and different methods of worship were allowed to thrive side by side. This hyper-inclusive philosophy matured over millennia, eventually culminating in schools of thought like Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta proposes that God isn't a singular, separate entity sitting above and watching the universe. Instead, God is the universe itself. Every person, object, and contradiction is just a temporary manifestation of the exact same underlying consciousness. To find their ultimate truth, the West chose to purge contradictions. The East chose to assimilate them all. Why did a single philosophical disagreement mutate into such different realities based on where these priests migrated? The Western ideology developed in the arid deserts of the Middle East. When resources are incredibly scarce and the environment is lethal, survival requires strict rules, singular focus, and absolute order. You simply cannot afford any ambiguity in a desert. The Eastern ideology blossomed in lush, resource-rich river valleys. In a highly fertile environment where nature constantly produces massive variety, the culture naturally allows for chaotic diversity and philosophical flexibility to coexist together, without ever threatening sheer survival. Human theology was shaped by divine revelation, but it was also driven by practical adaptation to the physical ground we stood on. The Atharvaveda functions as a raw DNA record of humanity's shared spiritual ancestry, documenting the very moment our ancestors chose different paths. For millennia, East and West have engaged in holy wars and bitter theological debates over the nature of the divine, yet historically they are operating from the exact same starting point. Whether a person directs their prayers toward Allah, Christ, or Shiva, that core human impulse traces its lineage back to the exact same ancient concepts. We look at the world today and see deep religious divisions, but the truth is, we are all participating in a conversation that started thousands of years ago, sitting around the exact same fire.